welcome. On a Top 5 Tuesday, we bring you guys in here on another episode of Main Street Sports Today, presented, as always, by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, alongside Calvin White and our producer, Mark Rogers. Wade Neely saying hello. Calvin, what's happening, brother?
I'm doing good. We made it through another week of high school football. Still kind of recovering, it seems. Always takes a couple of days after the fact to recover from those late nights on Friday. But as always, excited to bring another good show to the people on Top 5 Tuesday.
Yeah, we got an action-packed show. We got a big couple of hours lined up for you guys. We will tap into a whole bunch of stuff here in the next little bit. And we will close the show with our Top 5 Tuesday. We've done so many Top 5s. I feel like we might have done this in years past. And so if we have, just pretend that we haven't. But shows that we discovered after the fact. It'll make more sense when we get closer. But Calvin and I will give you some TV shows that we discovered after maybe their initial run. Maybe even much later than their initial run, but that should be fun to cap us out. That will be your final segment here again on this Top 5 Tuesday. Kind of setting the stage though for the other bits and pieces. We'll get into the grab bag. We got a lot to break down. Calvin mentioned high school football week 3. Mother Nature got involved. We even had a game that was pushed all the way to last night in our coverage area. We'll tell you guys about that. And we'll get a Calvin's recap of week 3 in the high school ranks. We'll talk some more NCAA football and NFL news. There's lots of news and notes coming out of week 1, including some roster moves that have been made by several franchises. So we'll get you guys up to speed on that. Speaking of getting you guys up to speed, it is Tuesday, which means we'll check in with our good friend Chip Walters. He's the MTSU Blue Raider voice. Chip will join us at the top of the 3 o'clock hour. We'll talk some MLB news and notes at the conclusion of this first hour. And prior to that, our good friend Steve LAYMAN from News Channel 5 will join us. He was on hand in Denver for the Titans Week 1 loss to the Broncos. We'll hear from Steve about that game, but we'll also talk about what do we make of the rest of the AFC South? What do we make of the rest of Week 1 in the NFL? And we'll also tap into Steve's knowledge for Week 3 of the college football season, which comes your way this weekend. Calvin, big show today. Always good to be with you on a Top 5 Tuesday. You survived, you mentioned. Mother Nature definitely kind of wreaked havoc on our high school football plans throughout the course of the weekend.
Yeah, I was, it seemed like Montgomery County was the only county in the whole mid-state, it felt like, to keep all kickoffs at 7 o'clock. And on Friday it said that there was a threat of severe weather starting around 3 o'clock, but at 3 o'clock it was perfectly sunny, no clouds in the sky, and then we got to about 7:30 and it wasn't even raining really. The lightning was just close enough to put a bunch of the games over here in lightning delay, so a bunch of those games were called early if they were in the second half, and then I believe there was 5 games in the county that were pushed to Saturday. So most of the teams in the county over here in Montgomery County finished up on Saturday. Most of Robertson County got their games in on Friday, whether they were called early or they got to finish. But we only had one game that had a kind of a wonky ending. But most of the teams over here in the Northwest region got their final scores in on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, crazy couple of nights. Some teams started early and still got postponed. Some teams started late and got postponed. Some teams just flat out didn't even play. But a busy week of high school football. Got a majority of our games in some shape, form, or fashion. So we'll tap into that. Speaking of, I told you guys there's one game that was played last night, and that is our it's our first score of interest on the rundown. Calvin, should we go ahead and get into that and give the people yesterday's results and give the people today's schedule? Should we go ahead and tap into the rundown for my friend?
Let's do it.
All right, with no further ado, Producer Mark, let's hit that beautiful music and let's take the folks to the rundown.
This is the rundown.
Lock and load, boys and girls. COVID / the flu kept me away from this one last night, but I wanted to be there, and I was there in spirit. And I wish I was there because Cheatham County, as I mentioned, they did move their game all the way to Monday. It was a region game, and they did get it in Monday night at the brand new Mike Giroux Field, and they got a nice win. 2 straight now. They didn't win a game for like 687 days at home. Now they've won back-to-back games at home as they defeat Stewart County last night 20-15. Lone football score from last night. Volleyball action last evening. It was Community with a 3-1 win over Battle Creek. Cookeville took care of Laverne 3-0. Oakland topping Franklin Christian 3-1. Friendship Christian with a 3-1 victory over Gallatin. Culleoka 3-0 over Moore County. It was Riverdale in a 5-set thriller 3-2 over Murfreesboro Central Magnet. Middle Tennessee Christian picking up a 3-0 win versus Providence Christian. Lincoln County did the same versus Rockvale. Santa Fe, excuse me folks. My deepest apologies. Santa Fe with a 3-0 win over Hampshire. Smyrna with a 3-1 victory over Wilson Central. It was Warren County 3, Stewart's County 2. It was Stewart's Creek 2, beg pardon. Summertown with a 3-1 win over Spring Hill. Zion Christian defeating Riverside Christian 3-0. Girls soccer scores from last night. DCA picks up a 7-1 win versus Nashville Christian. It was Culleoka 4, Lewis County 0. Richland with a nice district victory 3-1 over Loretto. And St. Cecilia Academy, too much for Middle Tennessee Christian, 9-0 was your final there. In Major League Baseball action last night, it was the Cubs falling to the Braves as they begin that series down there in Hotlanta. It was the Braves with a 4-1 victory, again, over the Chicago Cubs. WNBA scores from last night. The Dream took care of the Sun, 87-62. And in NFL action, crazy ending. Yet again, just like Sunday Night Football, Monday night produces some late magic as the Vikings come charging back and defeat the Bears last night, 27-24.
Looking at tonight's prep volleyball schedule, Fayetteville is at Santa Fe. Cascade is at Spring Hill. Both of those games are at 5 p.m. The Webb School is at Providence Christian. St. Cecilia Academy is at Columbia Academy. Middle Tennessee Christian at Franklin Christian. Franklin Road Christian at Zion Christian. All of those games are at 5:45. Forest is at Battle Creek. Rockvale at Blackman. Hampshire at Collinwood, Eagleville at Culleoka, Beach at Gallatin, Columbia at Lincoln County, Perry County at Loretto, Murfreesboro Central Magnet at Marshall County, East Hickman at Mount Pleasant, Riverdale at Shelbyville, Cookeville at Smyrna, Stewart's Creek at White County. All of those games are at 6 p.m. Siegel at Oakland will be at 6:30. And we don't have times for these, but Laverne is at Lebanon and Summertown is at Lewis County. Moving over to girls soccer, Antioch is at Hillsboro at 4 p.m. Lead Academy is at KIPP Antioch Global at 4:30. Esau Harding is at Clarksville Academy. Culleoka at Cornersville. Friendship Christian at Donaldson Christian. University School of Nashville at Davidson Academy. Providence Christian at Grace Christian Franklin. Glencliff at Lawson. Cookeville at Smyrna. Middle Tennessee Golden Eagles at St. Cecilia Academy. Franklin Road Academy at BGA. John Overton at McGavick at 5:30. All of those games I mentioned previously were at 5 p.m. And then Kenwood is at Dixon County, and Wilson Central is at Laverne at 6 p.m. Wade, you want to close us out with the rest of those girls' soccer scores?
Yep, we'll take it from here. Got some other 6 o'clock kickoffs to tell you guys about. Zion Christian on the road at Lincoln County tonight down there in Fayetteville. Station Camp at Macon County. And Blackman is at Shelbyville. White County is on the road at Watertown. Final 6 p.m. kickoff tonight. It'll be Middle Tennessee Christian at Cannon County. 6:30 kickoffs for McEwen at Clarksville Northeast. Harpeth Hall is at Pope John Paul II. Hendersonville's on the road at Portland at 6:30. Siegel is at Rockvale, and Battle Creek is at Tullahoma. 7 p.m. showdowns as Independence will travel to Centennial. Kirkwood will be on the road at Clarksville Northwest. Warren County is at Columbia this evening. Montgomery Central traveling to Fairview. Summit making the trip up, I guess I should say, to Franklin. Columbia Academy is at Franklin Christian. Mount Juliet will be at Liberty Creek. CPA traveling to Merrill Hyde tonight. Brentwood is on the road at Nolensville. Riverdale traveling to Oakland. Clarksville is on the road this evening at Rossview. Lebanon making a trip over to Stewart's Creek at 7 o'clock. 7:15 showdown as Martin Luther King is at Valor Collegiate. Richland is scheduled to go to Marshall County tonight, but we do not have a start time available to us. 6:07 p.m., not a moment before, but 6:07 will be the Astros and Blue Jays tonight. Should be a fun series. You can watch that one on MLB TV. Cubs will be at the Braves tonight at 6:15. That game is on FanDuel Sports South. 6:35 tonight, first pitch as Gwinnett comes to Nashville. It'll be Tito's Tail Wagging Tuesday. Yours truly and the fam hoping to rally, but it's not looking good for me in terms of the health and wellness here. So I'm trying to make it out to Tail Wagging Tuesday for the final one of the year, but I'll be firmly a game time decision tonight. Hopefully, whether my presence is there or not, hopefully the Sounds get business in their favor with 6:35 again, your first pitch time. Got a slew of WNBA games tonight on various channels. Washington is at the Liberty at 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus. And Minnesota is at Indiana Fever at 6:30 on ESPN. At 9 p.m. on NBA TV, it'll be the Sparks at the Mercury. You can also see the Sky at the Aces at 9, and Golden State will be at Seattle. Again, 5 WNBA showdowns tonight, beginning at 6, and then a trio at 9, as that brings us to the end of our Tuesday schedule. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this Tuesday rundown. Top story, as always, brought to you by our friends at Piggly Wiggly over at Neely's Mill in Columbia. Make sure that you check them out for your delicious daily deli lunch options, where they also offer hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10 at the cash register. Open from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Once again, Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia, presenting our top story. Calvin, this is one that hits close to home for you. So I'm going to set it up, and then I want to dig into the weeds with you here, partner. But we have an interesting development going on in Clarksville, at Clarksville Northwest in particular. The headline reads, from Main Street, Clarksville, Clarksville Northwest SRO is being reviewed for a proselytizing, thank you. I've never had the chance to use that word.
I didn't either.
But basically, a Northwest assistant football coach and SRO is being put on paid leave amid a complaint that he was proselytizing during the Vikings' 35-0 loss to Davidson Academy on Friday. Calvin, from here, I'll turn it over to you. Tell us the rest of the story and kind of really tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, so this assistant coach, his name is Trey Campbell. He's an assistant coach, and he's the SRO one of the SROs over at Northwest. And this first kind of broke out because people, he had he had a Bible on the sideline, and he was praying with the players. But from what everybody's saying, he wasn't leading like a group prayer. These players were just going to him voluntarily and participating in prayer and that sort of thing. But during halftime of the game on Friday, the Northwest principal basically gave him a choice. She said, either put your Bible away, or we're going to have you, or we're going to ask you to leave the game. He did not choose to put it away, so the principal had him escorted out of the game. And so, everybody's there's two sides, because, some people were trying to say that he was forcing the kids to participate, and he was trying to, convert the kids, and, try to push his religion on them and things like that. And then there's the other side where people are saying, he wasn't forcing anybody to do anything. The players were participating voluntarily. And so now this is being investigated by the Clarksville Montgomery County school system. He was put on paid leave by the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office while they investigate this. So um, he's going to be on paid leave while the school board investigates this. How long that takes, who knows? But this happened on Friday, and this is already um, it's hit all the news outlets here in Clarksville. It's hit a bunch of the news outlets out of Nashville. WSMV had a story on it last night. Um, so this is already making waves, at least around the mid-state. We've seen stories like this come up in areas all over the country over the past couple of years. This has been a big topic recently over the last couple of years. So we will definitely keep an eye on this and kind of see what comes of this, and we'll see if this assistant coach is allowed to return to his job as an assistant coach in SRO.
And the interesting thing about this story, Calvin, and I want to ask you this too. If you go to any high school game, whether it's football or any other sport for that matter, I mean, there is an element more often than not of a team prayer. We even see, obviously, a invocation being offered across the public address. All of that is kind of commonplace, and all of that is relatively quote unquote normal. But this seemingly kind of goes, if we're reading this story correct, and if these, quote unquote accusations, feels almost kind of odd saying it in that regard, but if those quote unquote accusations are correct, this seemingly is something that kind of goes above and beyond kind of what we're used to at this point. You're telling me.
Yeah, it feels that way. I think this story kind of just comes down to whose side you believe. You know, uh, WSMV, had a reporter go out to Northwest, I believe Saturday, um, sometime this weekend. She talked to a student, the reporter talked to a student, and, the student says she was at the game, and the coach absolutely was not, forcing players to participate and things like that. And I saw a photo from I believe a Northwest parent on Facebook, and it was a picture of the coach like standing on the sideline with his Bible, like talking to one of the players. Now that was obviously totally out of context. Probably there was no context given with that, so we don't know exactly what was going on there. But it kind of just comes down to which side you believe, and um, I guess we'll see how the school board decides to investigate this, and then we will certainly have an update when something comes of this.
Yeah, and it feels like, given the subject matter and considering high school football already carries kind of such media attention. I guess everybody's tuned into it and tapped into it, and there's a lot of socioeconomic, and high school sports carry a lot more weight than just what happens on the field. We're talking about developing young men and young women at various schools. So you factor in that, and then you kind of factor in the subject matter that we're talking about here. It feels like we have certainly not even scratched the surface of what's yet to come on this story. It feels like we're really just kind of getting things started. It feels like, to me at least.
Yeah, this is a big topic that people care about. People always want to get involved in. And there's a quote in this story. It's from a parent of a Northwest football player. They wanted to remain anonymous, but she says, "My son, who's of a different religion than him," talking about the assistant coach, "never ever felt like he was being pushed in any direction when it came to religion. A prayer was offered, and he could include himself or not include himself. It was up to him, and I'm okay with that." So, kind of going back to this goes, I guess the decision that people makes on this just kind of comes down to which side you believe. Obviously, as we could imagine, there's a lot more people siding with the coach than the principal here, but um, just a wild situation that, especially when religion gets involved, that's something that a lot of people have a very expressed opinion about, and um, like I said before, we'll definitely be monitoring this.
Yeah, we will keep tabs on that, and I guarantee you, yeah, we have not heard the last. So make sure you check out Calvin's story at mainstreetclarksville.com as this kind of breaking news continues to kind of engulf the Clarksville Northwest football program. So make sure you check that out. And that was, again, our top story brought to you by our friends at Piggly Wiggly over at Neely's Mill in Columbia. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll sit down with our good friend Steve LAYMAN, who was on hand for the Titans Week 1 game out in Denver. But we'll also pick Steve's brain on the rest of the Week 1 NFL results, as well as a big week of college football coming your way. Steve LAYMAN will join us on the other side of this timeout. Folks, you're watching Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia.
Closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mint Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need...
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
833.
Busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now
busy
ready,
bee.
guys.
Call 775-7833.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Welcome back, gang. Hour number 1 of Main Street Sports Today, presented by TOA of Columbia, is rolling right along. Alongside Calvin White and our producer, Mark Rogers, Wayne Neely saying hello. Without further ado, let's bring in our guest this afternoon. Steve LAYMAN from News Channel 5 is going to be gracious with his time and join us. And Steve, have you recovered from your trip out to the Mile High City this weekend just yet?
I have. Pretty quick. It was pretty long on the way back on a red eye on Sunday night after the game to get back for everything yesterday. But rested up last night. Good to go for week 2 after a busy one.
Yeah, and thank you for making some time amidst all your travels to join us. And Steve, let's just dive right in. You know, we broke down and analyzed the good, the bad, and a lot of the ugly that we saw from the Titans on yesterday's program. But I just wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what did you like? What little bit maybe was there to like in your mind from the Titans? And we certainly want to ask you kind of what you took away from the bad, from Sunday.
Sure, Wade. I obviously wanted to see how Cam Ward would perform, and not necessarily is he going to complete 75% of his passes or throw for 300 yards, but how is he going to stand up to the pressure that Denver's going to throw at him? How is he going to handle a hostile environment on the road in his first NFL start? And I think he passed that part of the test with flying colors. He obviously needs to be more efficient. His receivers need to help him out there. The offense needs to find its way to the end zone. But there was a lot to like about his poise, his decision making, and where he tried to put the ball and the way he protected the ball for the most part throughout the day. I was also encouraged by the defense. I thought Denard Wilson had his team ready to play. I think they made the Broncos look really bad most of the afternoon on Sunday, and they ended up with 4 turnovers, which was a huge emphasis this offseason, was finding a way to get the football more for your offense, and the Titans defense did that. The problems are obvious. They set out to make this offensive line better. They gave up 6 sacks. I know Denver's a challenge, but that was a mess at times. The offense couldn't find its way to the end zone, even though it was in Denver territory 7 times.
Wow.
3 drives started in Denver territory, and they walked away with 3 points. They obviously didn't capitalize on the 4 turnovers very well. And then, of course, you get down to the coaching situation. I still have no idea what Brian Callahan was thinking at the end of the first half when the Titans had the ball at their own 7-yard line and 47 seconds left. And I asked him yesterday because he said Sunday, I was trying to be aggressive there. I knew the coverage was coming, and I wanted to see if we could hit a shot there on that first play. I get that. But say you hit the shot. You get a 25 or a 30-yard gain from your own 7-yard line. You're still at your own 32, 35. You need at least another play, maybe 2 more plays to get yourself into field goal range there at the end of the half. And I'm just sitting there thinking, when you're in a game when your offense hasn't moved the ball, you're up 6-3 on the road against a team that everybody thinks is better than you. Why in the world would you risk that? The risk-reward analysis there just doesn't pay off. It takes too much for you to cash in on that. And the risk is pretty large. And as we saw, the Titans punted. The Broncos scored one of their 2 touchdowns on the day, and they have the lead at halftime. Because of that, I was a little less concerned about the decision to not challenge the Io Manor play in the moment, because I don't know if they had the best look at it. It could have been difficult to overturn. But the way he's handled it after the fact, in his description on Sunday, which clearly was incorrect about the rule interpretation there, and then what he said yesterday, where at first he owned it and said, hey, it was just a mistake, I didn't get it right, and then later he said, look, I know the rule, but it was confusing in the moment, and I just misspoke after the fact. I just think it's all been a very bad look for a head coach that people are wondering, just as much as can the team grow this year, can he grow as a coach this year? I don't think we saw it in week number 1, and now the spotlight is very much on Brian Callahan for him to essentially prove he's worthy of this job and the opportunity to groom Cam Ward for the Titans fan base and, most importantly, Amy Adams Strunk and ownership moving forward.
Yeah, and Steve, I wanted to ask you about the coaching, situation, obviously, because you hear a lot, coaches buy themselves an extra year when they either transfer, decide to go with a backup quarterback or, in this case, draft a guy number 1 overall. Doesn't seem like that same, good fortune is being extended to Callahan, at least early on, because of some of those decisions and explanations that we saw coming out of Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's true, because I think what happened Sunday was an embarrassment from a coaching perspective for the Titans. And look, if you would have told Titans fans this time last week that they're going to go to Denver, a team that was in the playoffs last year, and a lot of people think will be back there and possibly a contender this season, and they're going to be in a 1-score game with the ball late in the 4th quarter with a chance for Cam Ward to go to the field and show us what he can do, I think every single Titans fan would have taken that. But when you actually watch the way the game played out, and Brian Callahan's offense is unable to take advantage of 4 Broncos turnovers, and he's unable to lock the key there, and the offensive line, coached by his dad, that they worked so hard to fix in the offseason, gives up 6 sacks, and then you look at those coaching decisions, the first half, the back-to-back sacks in the 4th quarter, where you're obviously trying to be aggressive in that moment when, frankly, kneeling the ball 3 times gives you a chip shot field goal for Joey Sly and the lead at that point on the road. And then obviously the explanations, not just after the game in the post-game locker room, but also on Monday. I think all of that raises a lot of questions and certainly has Titans fans up in arms.
Steve, something that has kind of fascinated me with the Titans over the last couple of years is their inability to put at least a decent offensive line on the field. And, last year, I think that this was part of the reason that Will Levis looked maybe a little bit worse than he might have been just as a player. But, obviously with back-to-back rookie quarterbacks, with a not so great offensive line, what do you think has been the Titans? Now, obviously Lloyd Cushenberry missed a lot of last year and he hasn't played this year, and Denver's a really good defense. But what do you think has been the Titans' biggest struggle with putting a decent offensive line on the field?
It's been a real problem for them. There's no question about it. Just finding that consistent group of guys that can go out there and get the job done for you. And at the end of the day, I don't care what level of football you're talking about. You've got to be good in the trenches. No matter how good your quarterback is, you've got to be able to protect him. You've got to be able to run the ball. And same thing on the other side. You have to be able to impact the line of scrimmage on the defensive line. When the Titans were at their best under Mike Vrabel, they had a good offensive line, one of the best in the league. That group got older, it got hurt, it broke down. And so this is the rebuild still from that, trying to get back to an average level in the NFL. They've spent a lot of money and put a lot of resources into this now. Peter Skoronski was really good the other day. You have Kevin Zeitler, who's been a rock in the NFL in his time over many seasons with different teams on the right side. I think J.C. Latham, while he's a little beat up and he had to leave the game the other day with that hip injury, I think him being back at the right side is important. Lloyd Cushenberry comes back at center. He's a guy you're trying to build around in there. The biggest concern to me right now is Dan Moore, who they paid a lot of money to in the offseason to be the answer at left tackle. And he really struggled in game number one, not just pass blocking against that great Broncos pass rush, but he wasn't very good as a run blocker the other day as well on that side. And you spent a lot of money on him, and you moved a first-round draft pick in Latham back to the right side. Now, that may be the right call for Latham, but it's yet to be seen if they fix the answer at left tackle. And you've got to have a left tackle in this league, especially if you think you have a star quarterback in Cam Ward. And so to me, look, the Broncos are really good. They're really good, particularly up front defensively. That was a challenge in week one. It maybe exposed the Titans for the worst they could be the entire season. I expect them to be better than that. But it wasn't good. And it was particularly not good at the left tackle position, and that has to get fixed.
And then just kind of looking at the division as a whole, the Texans and the Titans lose. Colts and Jaguars get big wins in week one. Do you think that, just kind of looking at the division as a whole, do you think that this is another year where, maybe the Texans might run away with the division for the third year in a row? Or do you think, even though it's only week one, do you think the Colts and the Jaguars are better teams than they have been recently, and they can kind of give the Texans a push for that division title?
I think both those teams are a bit better for sure, but I still think the Texans have the best pieces in the division. My big concern with Houston, though, is they may have the worst offensive line situation, not just in the division, but maybe in the entire NFL. And if they can't protect C.J. Stroud and can't get that offense going consistently because they can't block, that's going to be a problem for them. I view this division as the Texans to lose, but I think it's fairly wide open after that, especially if Daniel Jones plays the way he did the other day. That Colts roster is better than you think. And so they could be a bit of a sleeper in this. I still don't really believe in Jacksonville, but I think they're better than they were last year. And I'd like to think the Titans are better than they were last year as well. So I think there's opportunity for growth there, and maybe an opportunity for a surprise team to get in the mix either in the division or for a wild card, as much as these teams are going to play against themselves. But also I would caution you after week number one. The Titans game was pretty goofy. They very easily could have won on the road against Denver. I think the Rams are pretty good. Houston barely loses that. And I think the two teams that the other two faced in Miami and Carolina are about as bad a football teams as you're going to find in the NFL. And so, yes, the Colts look good. Yes, the Jags had a nice win in week number one. But against who? We'll find out a whole lot more about this division over the next couple of weeks.
Talking with Steve Layman from News Channel 5. And Steve, before we kind of really pivot, I do want to ask one more thing. You mentioned the turnovers the Titans defense forced. That to me, you obviously want to win the game, but seeing the defense kind of ball hawk the way that it was at times, that to me was the most refreshing thing I think that I saw of any part of the game on Sunday. I'm kind of curious your thoughts there. Is that sustainable? Because we've heard for the last couple of years they really want to increase the number of takeaways. We just haven't seen it that just yet.
Yeah, I agree with you, Wade. I love to see the way they flew around, particularly in the secondary, to get a couple of those. And I thought you saw a complementary defensive approach where that defensive front, the front seven in total, I thought worked well together, and they allowed the coverage to hold up on the back end. Or the coverage would be tight on guys and force Bo Nix to hold the ball maybe a tick longer that allow you to get pressures up front. Jeffrey Simmons himself had 7 pressures in the game on Sunday. That's what you're looking for out of your star. And so you love to see that, and your defense able to get their hands on the football. The frustrating thing about it is you got 4 turnovers in week 1. That should be good enough to win. They were essentially +3 in the turnover battle until the last meaningless play of the game. You got to win that game. And every week matters in the NFL, and you do wonder if the Titans can take a stride this year, if you may not look back at some point in December or at the end of the season and look at that week 1 game where the defense played so well and gave you multiple opportunities to grab that game and steal it on the road, and you couldn't get it done. Could that potentially hurt you or cost you a wild card spot or maybe even a spot in this division if you truly take a step forward? You hope not, but it's always a possibility.
Steve, also want to ask you, what else jumped out to you in week 1? Everybody was talking about the crazy game between the Bills and the Ravens on Sunday night. And we saw an equally crazy result last night with the Vikings storming back. What else jumped out to you? Who maybe should really be on alert, or who should be feeling really good in your mind coming out of week 1?
Yeah, those 2 games are what I certainly got to see the most of since I was covering the Titans on Sunday. But to me, the things that jumped out is I thought the Packers looked really good in week number 1 at home with a win over the Lions. Jordan Love played great. I was surprised by how good Justin Fields looked for the Jets and keeping pace with the Steelers in that game. So that was an interesting development for me. And the 2 primetime games. First off, I felt like I was watching a different sport from watching the Broncos and the Titans to that Sunday night football game. Nobody wanted to take advantage of anything in the afternoon game that I was at. And then you go to the Sunday night game, and it was like it was volleyball. They were going back and forth scoring with such ease. It was like side out, side out, side out the whole way through. What an incredible comeback by the Bills, and Josh Allen is just simply incredible. But that Ravens team is loaded. And that offense is going to be really difficult to stop. Obviously, King Henry still has his fastball along with Lamar Jackson. And last night, I was impressed by Minnesota. It was a terrible first half for them. Mm-hmm. But J.J. McCarthy, in his first start back home in Chicago, just stuck with it. And I thought he had great command the final 20, 25 minutes of that game as the Vikings just rip off 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to win. I thought that was a really impressive performance on the road as well.
Steve, pivoting down to college football, Tennessee 2-0, they're going to go and play Georgia this week. I think I saw last night this is the first time that these two have got together before mid-September since, I believe, 1995. Do you think Tennessee has a shot against Georgia? Even if Tennessee is able to pull that off, what do you think that does for kind of the confidence level of the Vols going into the rest of the year?
It would be huge, obviously. I do think they have a shot in part because of the time of the season it is. I don't think Georgia has hit on all cylinders and has not been tested at this point, playing a Marshall team and then last week Austin Peay at home. This is going to be their first look, not just at a Power 5 team or Power 4 team now, but at an SEC team that's top 15, top 20 good this season so far, and plays at a pace with Joey Aguilar back at quarterback that I think can test anybody. So, yes, absolutely at home with 100,000 people screaming for Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. I think the Vols have a shot to beat Georgia this weekend. And if they do that, it propels them into a totally different conversation. I think the hope for most people this year was this would be a nice transition year for Tennessee with so many young pieces and a new quarterback who you brought in just in May. Can Tennessee be a top 25 team again all year long, get back to a nice bowl game, and sort of build to the next great run? Well, if you beat Georgia on Saturday, those expectations change significantly. Now you're talking about a team that believes it can get back to the college football playoff and believe it can compete for an SEC championship. So I would still make Georgia the favorite in my mind because I think their overall roster and the experience level is better. But I think particularly at home, and the fact that Tennessee did have a bit of a test in week one in a neutral environment against Syracuse, I think they're ready for this game, perhaps more than Georgia is this weekend. And could they pull off a bit of a surprise at home and jumpstart the season? I think it's entirely possible.
Talking with Steve Layman from News Channel 5, all things Titans, all things college football. And Steve, a couple quickies I got for you. While we're talking SEC and while we're talking football in the mid-state here, Vanderbilt going on the road and beating Virginia Tech. I was still kind of holding out hope on Virginia Tech, but maybe they're just not as good as I thought. Is this the real big test this week, and how do you handicap Vanderbilt's chances trying to go into Willie Beeman or to Williams-Brice rather, and get a win at South Carolina on Saturday night?
Well, if they get a car as well,
yeah,
they go down, and it is a bigger test. It'll be an electric environment. Not that Lane Stadium wasn't, but South Carolina will be ready for this one. But so should Vanderbilt. They were embarrassed by what the Gamecocks did up here last year. It had a lot riding on the line, and I think Vanderbilt, frankly, wore down at the end of the season last year. They've got more depth to this team. They've got more talent to this team this year. And if they go down there, it changes the calculus for them, too. Maybe not in their own minds, because they were talking playoff and national championship at SEC Media Days back in July. It's just nobody believed them when they were talking about it. If they go to South Carolina and follow up what they did against the Hokies with the win over the Gamecocks, well, now maybe some people are going to start to believe that as well. And, guys, I remember back in August when I went to training camp at Vanderbilt and I was listening to those expectations, I was looking at their schedule, and it just looked to me, I said, I don't know how they set the expectations so high internally, because it's going to lead to a letdown. Because if you look at their SEC schedule, they're probably going to be the underdogs in at least 5 of the 8 games, maybe 6. And you've got that trip to Virginia Tech, which is no gimme in the conference there. To me, this team getting back to a bowl game would be quite the success. But they've looked mighty impressive through 2 weeks. What they did in the second half last week at Virginia Tech was utterly dominant in a way that I don't remember watching a Vanderbilt team play. I absolutely believe they can compete at South Carolina, if not win the game. And I think you look at some of the other teams on that schedule, like maybe Alabama. Are the Crimson Tide as good as we thought going into the year? And maybe Vanderbilt isn't going to be such an underdog going into that game. So I still think it's a long shot for them to make the playoff. But they have been very impressive 2 weeks into the season. And this is as big of a football game as I can remember for Vanderbilt as they go down taking on a top 10, top 12 type of team in South Carolina. And if you win that, you're going to be ranked next week. And people are going to be talking about the Commodores as a real team to look out for in the SEC.
You said it. They put the absolute screws to Va-Tech there in the second half. Steve, want to ask you two more before we get you out of here. This is the rare opportunity we get a chance on this program to talk about Illinois football. Yes, Illinois football, but your beloved Illini, they're on fire, partner. You don't just roll into Duke and drop it on them like that. They took care of business in a big road game this weekend. They're ranked number 9 in the country.
Yeah, Brett Bielema has done a remarkable job up there, Wade, and it's kind of your dream as an Illini fan. We're known as a basketball school. You expect to compete for championships in that sport and make runs in the postseason, but it's been a long time since they've been consistently good in football. Ron Zook had a little bit of a run about 15 years ago or so, but it's been a long haul to get back to this point, and in 5 years, he's made Illinois a program that is deserving to be certainly in the top 25. And right now, they've got an experienced team, arguably the most experienced team in the Power Four in college football. He has both of his coordinators back for a third straight season. He has a quarterback back for a third straight season. That is unheard of. Mm-hmm. And after winning 10 games last year and beating South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl, they've got a lot of momentum. What they did to Duke in the second half on Saturday looked a lot like what Vanderbilt did at Virginia Tech. It was a completely dominant performance. They win by 26 on the road in a game that was essentially a pick-em going in. And now you set yourself up. It's a tough stretch coming up here. They play at Indiana in 2 weeks, back home against USC that at the moment is scoring like 125 points.
Yeah.
And then you're from playing Ohio State, who's the defending champion, right there is one of the best teams in the country again. So it's a bit of a stretch here that they're going to have to manage, but you believe that Illinois can show up and play defense. They've got a really good quarterback, and I think Illini fans are very excited for the potential that this team can be in the mix in the Big Ten and be in the mix for a playoff berth at the end of the year.
Always fun for me when you see kind of a team like in Illinois just, going about their business. And as long as they got Bielema calling the shots, they're going to be, I don't think, a team that we won't hear the last of going forward.
Hey, and real quick on that, Wade, that's one thing that in talking to Brett that he made clear to me, and I know he said it to others too, is the new age of college football with the revenue share, I think makes it more possible for an Illinois, for an Indiana last year, heck, a Vanderbilt, or maybe one of the schools in the SEC you don't expect to be up there, if not every year, but maybe occasionally as you get one of those upperclassmen laden teams, because now in revenue share, you have the opportunity to be certainly competitive in keeping the key guys on your roster, keeping the guys who've been impactful players for you so far, and maybe getting older and having that experienced team that has a chance to be at a championship level. But you also have a chance to just compete as a whole. No, Illinois or Vanderbilt doesn't have the money of Ohio State or Alabama or Tennessee. But if those teams are putting in 20, 25 million, maybe if you throw NIL in, well, now you can be at 15 or 16 million. That is a different playing field. And Brett always told me, hey, if you just get me close, our staff can develop well enough that we're going to be really competitive and win a lot of games. And that's the opportunity that has been afforded to some of these schools right now. And I think you see more parity in college football at the top in this 12-team playoff era because of it.
Absolutely. Steve, we close with this, and it's a chance for you to show off your chops, if nothing else. You mentioned volleyball earlier, and we've talked about Vanderbilt. Have you had a chance to check out the Vanderbilt rejuvenation of their volleyball program? A chance for you to show off your wealth of knowledge there for us here.
I have. I've been over there. It's been a lot of fun to see what Anders Nelson does. I'll tell you this. They are really talented and really athletic. And I think they've been more competitive than anybody could imagine so far. They took a top 15 Kansas team to 5 sets in their opening match in front of like 17,000 people or something like that out in Sioux Falls. And they come back. They have the great outdoor scene against Belmont. They play in the Broadway block party against my alma mater in Illinois and lost that one in 4 sets. They played a top 10 team in Minnesota last week. So they've tested themselves, but I think they've looked good. And I expect them. I don't think they're an NCAA tournament team, but I think they're going to be competitive in the SEC in year one of this relaunch. And it gives him an opportunity to show the volleyball lovers here in the mid-state, where the sport has really grown in recent years, that, hey, if you've got a daughter who's a quality player, you should really consider Vanderbilt and the opportunity. And I think they're going to turn heads on a national scale as well. So they've done a remarkable job in relaunching the program. I think the buzz around it has been cool, and it'll be fun to see how the rest of this season plays out.
I'm like you. I think they're going to be fun to watch. Whether that leads to, a tournament bid, maybe not, but it'll be exciting to watch as the season goes along. Where else, folks, can you get Titans college football and Vanderbilt volleyball all in the same segment? From Steve LAYMAN of News Channel 5, that's who. Steve, thank you so much, as always, for your time. We'll catch up with you soon, partner.
Hey, I pride myself on being well-rounded. You guys tested on that. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. See you soon. Thank you again to Steve Layman of News Channel 5 for joining us, bringing us the goods as he always does, talking everything Titans, NCAA football. Snuck in a little Illinois. That was a little bit of a fluff question for him there, but they are ranked number 9 in the land, Calvin. And then we closed Vanderbilt volleyball. He just mentioned volleyball and just something kind of started dancing in my brain, and I wanted to ask him. I knew he would at least set us on the right track. So good stuff there, talking with Steve Layman of News Channel 5. Make sure you check him out nightly on your newscast as well and on all of your social media channels. When Calvin and I come back, we're going to talk Major League Baseball. We'll get into this day in Braves history. We'll talk about yesterday in Braves history, and we'll talk about what's on tap for my Houston Astros coming up as we creep toward the top of the hour. Once again, you're watching Main Street Sports Today, where we are presented, as always, by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia.
Columbia Power and Water Systems is dedicated to bringing our customers reliable, local service. Whether you're turning on a light switch, your faucet, or streaming on TV, our dedicated team members from here in Murray County work every day to keep you on. If you need us, call us 931-388-4833 or visit cpws.com. CPWS, local service, local support.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
On September 9th, 2020, in a day of high-scoring games, it was the Braves setting a team record with 29 runs. 29 runs in a 29-9 win over the Marlins. They covered the 19.5 point spread there, I guess, that day, Calvin. 29-9, they win over the Marlins. The total is also the highest by a National League team since the start of the 20th century. Adam Duvall leads the charge with his second three-homer game in a week, driving in 9. As that was this day in Braves history. 29-9, Calvin. I'm just going to go ahead and say this. You score 29 runs in a game, you should win the game. And the fact you give up nearly 10 and still win, that just speaks to how dominant your offense was. 29-9. That is like the stuff of rookie mode on MLB The Show.
Yeah, I remember watching that game, and, times were good back then for Braves fans. The offense could actually score more than 2 runs a game. During those years, there was some weird thing or some weird stat where, like, if the Braves led or were tied after the 7th inning, they, like, almost always won. just because even if they were behind, they were going to come back and score runs. Like during those years, the Braves could be down 5 runs after, the 5th or 6th inning, and you never didn't believe that they weren't going to come back and at least make it a game. Obviously, that has not been the case for the Braves of the last 2 seasons. But yeah, times were good back then. The core that the Braves had, and mostly still have outside of Matt Olson wasn't on the team then. But those guys were raking. That was a fun time to be a fan of the Braves, even if it was during COVID.
Yeah, it made things a little more tolerable in some wild situations. That was this day in Braves history. Yesterday in Braves history, it was the Bravos defeating the Cubs 4-1 was your final down in Atlanta as they opened up that series. Atlanta gets on the board with 3 runs in the bottom of the first. Chicago makes it 3-1 with a run in the 7th, but an insurance run from the Braves in the 8th. Bryce Elder getting the win as the Cubs send Shota Imanaga to the mound, but see him get roughed up. So Atlanta with a nice win. And Calvin, it's like Mo and I kind of mentioned, you don't have much to play for at this point, but what you do have is the chance to be a little fly in the ointment for a team like the Cubs, a team that may end up winning 90 games this year, but they couldn't get by the Bravos last night.
Yeah, that's about the only thing that has kind of kept a lot of Braves fans watching the games, having those opportunities to spoil some teams' seasons. The Cubs, they've kind of beaten up on the Braves this year, it feels like. But then again, it feels like everybody that's not the New York Mets or the Miami Marlins is beating up on the Braves this year. But at this point, we're looking for any little positive we can find with the Braves. And anytime they can put on a performance against a good team, it's kind of a little bright spot in a mostly dim season.
Yep, they'll have a chance to do it again tonight. And again, the Cubs pretty much out of the division picture. And again, this is a team that's probably going to win 90 games, but they have virtually no chance. Fangraphs.com has the Brewers up to 99.5% to win that division. So the Cubs picked a wrong time to run up against a really hot Brewers team who's already at 89 wins. So a chance for the Braves to further be the plight of the Cubs. Tonight, Cade Horton and Spencer Strider will toe the rubber in their respective uniforms this evening. Meanwhile, the Astros, we told you guys in the rundown, they got a big series coming up versus the Blue Jays. A chance for both of these teams to kind of find their footing after they've really kind of been struggling. Houston in particular is just kind of skating by on the fact that nobody else outside of the Rangers, who are in 3rd place in that division, nobody else really seemingly is answering the bell. So a chance for the Astros or the Blue Jays, who've kind of been skidding in their own right, to maybe get back into it. 6:07 will be your first pitch in that one tonight.
Yeah, we've talked about the Astros over the last couple of weeks as one of those teams that have just kind of been, lulling ever since they had a really good start to the year. Astros still haven't been able to extend their lead over the Mariners over in the AL West. Only a 2-game lead over the Mariners, but we talked about that, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago when the Astros had a 2 or 3 game lead over the Mariners. So I guess that's partly, Astros have been playing well enough to stay in front of the Mariners, and even the Mariners hit a little slump right there when Cal Raleigh stopped raking for a little bit and they kind of fell off. And like you said, the Texas Rangers, only 3.5 back of the Astros. So like we mentioned last week, really important home stretch for the Astros to hopefully secure that division title and get in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Rangers only have about an 18% chance to make the playoffs, but they are probably the hottest team in Major League Baseball. No one's really playing great over a majorly sustained stretch right now, it feels like, but Texas is kind of coming on. They've won 7 out of their last 10. They've won 2 in a row, and if they had not gotten off to such a putrid start, they probably would be in much better position as we close our MLB section here on Main Street Sports today. When we come back, It'll be hour number 2, and it'll also be, you know it, he's in the green room waiting on us. Our good friend Chip Walters, the Blue Raider voice, is on the other side of this timeout. We're talking all things MTSU with our good friend Chip after this on Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented by TOA of Columbia.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Is your internet slowing you down? It's time for an upgrade. Whether you're at home, working from your home office, or at your business, it's time to unleash the speed you need with speeds up to 1 gig at CPWS for as low as $70 a month. Give us a call, 931-375-7777. Local service, local support, CPWS.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Hour number 2, rolling right along here on Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented as always by our good friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. He is Calvin White. I'm Wade Neely, our producer making the magic happen back behind the glass. The one, the only, Mark Rogers. And producer Mark is bringing in our next guest. He's our good friend. He joins us each and every single Tuesday to talk all things MTSU. He's the Blue Raider voice. Chip Walters in the building. Good afternoon, Chip.
How are you guys?
We're great. We're
Good
great.
deal.
Are
Good
you
deal.
You are in the cozy confines of Murfreesboro and not on full-blown assignment. You didn't extend the road trip just straight on out, I guess, huh?
No. We actually, we have very very good travel. I was actually walking in my house at 11 o'clock Saturday night after an afternoon game in Wisconsin. This week we'll turn around a little more to the travel this week, simply because of distance. It'll be about a 4.5 hour flight out, about a 3.5 hour flight coming home due to tailwind coming west to east after the game. But that means that the coaching staff has a few other things to be concerned about, and that is making sure that the guys stay hydrated. Derek was talking last night on the radio show that the rule of thumb is for every hour you're in an airplane, you should drink an extra 8 ounces of fluid. So, whatever that works out to be. So, but this week, two teams that are, kind of searching to solidify a positive identity. Middle came and played much better against Wisconsin than they did against Austin Peay. And I think Austin Peay kind of opened a few more eyes this past weekend as well with their trip down to Georgia. But Blue Raiders played really well. And there was you get down to a handful of plays and you look in that third quarter, in Madison, Wisconsin, Middle is down 14-10 and driving to take the lead in the third quarter and don't get a first down on a 4th and short. Just couldn't make that happen. And then 2 plays later, Wisconsin takes advantage. And here's where, a halftime adjustment comes in. They've been watching Middle's defense, because Middle's going to have to play, all out and all to the wall. And so they're over pursuing everything. And so Wisconsin took advantage of that with a reverse and an end around. And those 2 plays combined were 99 yards and 14 points. And it took a game that was a 4-point game that Middle was driving to take the lead out to an 18-point Wisconsin lead. So that was every game has a couple of critical points, and that was right there where Wisconsin was able to use their muscle and their depth a little bit to kind of turn the tide on that one. Had Middle gone on and taken a lead, who knows what happens? Could change the complexion. But, the thing was, everybody got on the plane coming home feeling much better about where the Blue Raiders were after the game at Camp Randall than after the home opener against Austin Peay.
Yeah, the way that it kind of turns out, Chip, yes, it's in a losing effort, but there's no way you don't feel better. And it almost, to me, the sense that I get is, hey, we learned really more of who we are and this is more of the team that we're about than what we put on the field in week 1.
Yeah, defensively, Middle has been pretty good against the run for the most part, outside of a handful of big plays. And Wisconsin on Saturday had 13 big plays, of 20 yards or more, which, a couple of those were runs, but mostly those were big pass plays. So now you go and you face a team that you feel like, okay, now it's a Mountain West opponent who's had kind of a similar makeup of their schedule. They opened the season at Penn State, then came home for Sacramento State, lost big at Happy Valley, won a squeaker at home against Sacramento State, which is a good trivia question, Calvin. You might, what is the Blue Raider tie to Sacramento State? You know the answer?
I do not.
That's where Asher O'Hara transferred to. And he is the last Blue Raider to have 1,000 yards rushing in a season. Was not a running back. It was a quarterback. Who did that. So, but Asher transferred to out to Sacramento State, and they've been pretty good in Division II, and so this will be an interesting matchup this week against this Nevada ball club. And, Middle's just got to make sure that they, this week preparing, get good rest, all of that kind of stuff. Make sure you're hydrated before you get on the plane. Put yourself in a good position and get ready to take on the Wolfpack and Brock Purdy's brother, Chubba Purdy, who is the starting quarterback for the Wolfpack of Nevada.
Chip, you mentioned that, MTSU and Nevada are both teams that are trying to find their identity going into week 3. Now, obviously, MTSU played a totally different caliber opponent from week 1 to week 2, but, like you said, looked a lot better in week 2 than they did in week 1. But what do you think MTSU's identity is at the moment?
I think one of growth right now in what they want to be is a team that is going to be physical on defense. Offensively, they're wanting to be a consistently efficient offense that puts more points on the board. They've publicly stated their goal week in, week out is 35 points a game. So they're looking to get to that. And they got much better quarterback play this week. You're still waiting on some of these, some of the names in the receiver room who did so much during spring ball and fall camp to to raise their head and raise their hands and make catches. Najee Cox right now has gone to the head of the class. He has been easily Middle's best receiver so far. And the offensive line played better, not to where you want them to be yet, in particular in the run game, but that's where they want to get to. I think right now is they're a team that is in. I'm not going to say they're in flux, but they're in transition of getting from where they were to where they want to be.
And then, kind of pivoting, it was a big weekend for women's golf. You put in our little text chain here, they fired a school record second round. What can you tell us about women's golf?
Well, they really had some good luck and good play, and the Blue Raiders on the let me find it here. They went. I think they were 16 under par. They played a 36-hole day. They played 18 in the morning and 18 in the afternoon. The morning round they were like 10 over, and then came back and turned it around and went 16 under. That's a 26 shot difference in what you're doing. And Ella Manley, who she has just, I mean, she plays with a lot of, she plays with a lot of confidence. She helped lead that. She was 9 under herself after being 2 over in the early part, but I was able to pull it up. Yeah, they were at 9 under, 279, which is the lowest round in school history for the team round. The previous low mark was 7 under in a tournament. So, they're in still after, but their first round hurt them. They're playing the final round of this event hosted by North Texas, the Sam Golden Invitational. It's down in the Metroplex in the Dallas area. They're winding that up today and trying to move up the leaderboard as a team. They were 10th after the 2 rounds yesterday, and trying to make up some ground in that one. So they and the men's team have both been out on the road, and the fall is where you try to get your team right, and the spring is where you play for conference championships and try to get into an NCAA regional. But they're gonna come home after today, and then play TSU over at McCabe in Nashville on Friday, I think. So Wade, you might want to slide over and catch a little Lady Raider action over there in beautiful Sylvan Park.
Well, I love what you just said too. You'll obviously take the success in the fall, but really what you do is you're just trying to sharpen everything to get ready for the spring. So yeah, it's fantastic that you're off to a great start. To me, that just means that your team is already trending in the right direction towards when things really start counting in the spring.
Yep, exactly. I agree with you. And Lauren Walmsley, she is going into her second year as head coach. She's been here a year. She is putting the roster, her fingerprint on the roster, and they've responded to her. Middle Tennessee was under Chris Adams for, probably about a dozen years, and she had a good bit of success as well, and but doing it her way. Now Lauren Walmsley's doing it in her way, and so far so good. She's gotten a couple of, she gets here about the time the transfer portal era kind of blows open in all sports, and they've been able to get a couple of nice transfers in. One in particular, local product who played at PCA and was at Tennessee, transferred back home, and so that's Isabella Johnson. And then you got, like I said, Ella Manley, who really finished strong last year, has started out after winning the Kentucky Women's Amateur this year, coming back in the fall season and really getting Middle off to a good start.
You mentioned McCabe Golf Course too. I don't know that I got the chops to get out there and be welcomed at McCabe just yet, but got some relatives and some in-laws that play there frequently. That's a nice track for MTSU to go out and hopefully get a good round in on Friday.
You know, McCabe is a great place. I used to live right next door to it, and I may or may not have snuck on after hours with my pull cart and played 5 or 6 holes after work. You know, the cool thing about McCabe, it's 27 holes. So you can pick which 18 you want to play. And you also have the other good part about it is you are literally within walking distance or cart distance from a couple of nice watering holes there in Sylvan Park, should you be playing. But for a city course, I mean, that's where where the school days invitational takes place, where it's a great, high school amateur tournament. And it kind of warmed my heart a little bit to see that the old Blue Raiders and the Tigers were going to play over at McCabe coming up this week.
Absolutely. And Chip, speaking of matches or matchups versus schools from Nashville, women's soccer, double dose of heartbreak. They fought to Lipscomb here in the Music City last Thursday, and then Sunday night at home, they were snake bit, losing to number 25 Vanderbilt by a goal. Both of those games were 1-0 finals.
Yeah, just could not get as much offense going as they would have liked. The thing you pull away from both of those is you only give up 1 goal. Demi Gronauer, she has been just a wall all year long. And, and for Aston Rodens Ball Club, still they're 4-3-1 in their first 8. They started 3-0-1. And, they have been 1-3 in their last 4 matches, but they've got, they're going to play Tennessee Tech Thursday in Murfreesboro over at the Dean Hayes Track and Soccer Stadium. So that'll be an opportunity to get the home field back and get your mojo going. The home that stadium has been good to the Lady Raiders. This past Sunday, they announced a sellout of 1,500 for the Vanderbilt matchup. So that's good. That soccer that was against obviously a top 25 opponent. Some folks came down from Nashville, saw a great match. Didn't go Middle's way there, but they've got a chance to come bounce back, and they're in a good position getting ready for the Conference USA season.
Chip, volleyball's off to a 4-2 start under Alexa Keckler this year. They've got another big weekend this weekend up at the the Miami Best Western Invitational. We got so used to volleyball being under Chuck Crawford for so long. What have you seen out of Alexa Keckler's squad so far?
Well, it's interesting. You talk about a coach putting her fingerprint on her ball club. 16 new players on the roster. She is. I've not had a chance to see them play in a real match because we've been on the road or wherever. But she is a. How do I say? There's no question who's in charge. No, I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And she's a head coach's head coach, and she commands the respect of her ball club. She has they're all pulling the same direction right now, which that's something that was needed and is needed, and they're playing with a great deal of discipline. And have some young players who are, they're living through some growing pains, but they're also finding ways to win matches. And this past weekend, their only loss was to Mississippi State, but they beat Marist and UT Martin, and both of those wins were 3-0. So, when they get a lead, they're hard to beat, and they're able to put people away. So it's going to be interesting. You've got a top 25 program in the league in Western Kentucky, and everybody knows that's what the target is. And Alexa, Coach Keckler, she's I have no doubt she's going to do what it takes to get that program there, whether it's this year or whether it's in the next couple of years, because obviously, as we talk every week, whatever sport it is, you're able to kind of turn your roster with the transfer portal, and she has done that and gone out and found players, and when she gets a full year of being able to recruit to her system and be able to show players, high school players or potential transfers, video of what they're doing, then that's something that that she'll be, I think that'll serve her well.
Talking with Chip Walters, he's the MTSU Blue Raider voice. We're talking all things Blue Raiders at the moment. And Chip, if you didn't get out and see volleyball this past weekend, you got to wait a while because they're not back at home. They are going to be active, but they're not going to be at home till Friday, September 26th, when they welcome Kennesaw State. I find this conference schedule format kind of unique, Chip, in the sense that it seems like they play a single match on Friday and then they turn right back around and play another match on Saturday, home or away. So a chance to see, if you missed that Friday game, you still got a chance to see whoever's in town on that Saturday, it seems like.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to basketball without the off day. And you have a home weekend, you'll play two teams, you'll go on the road and you'll play two teams. You kind of would think they might go Friday, Sunday, but they chose Friday, Saturday. There may be a couple of Friday, Sundays in there, but the thing that Coach Keckler and pretty much every volleyball coach that has been in place, they have really embraced the atmosphere of Alumni Memorial Gym, the old AMG, because it is, and you can go back and look at some of the photos and video from this past weekend from the Blue Raider Bash, and man, the stands were full, and that kind of crowd, in a full house in AMG is not nearly the number it takes to be a full house in Murphy Center. So what you get is a great atmosphere that's kind of a snake pit to play in, and you kind of build your team to play in that atmosphere, and she's embraced it, and when somebody asked her, said, "Would you like to play some games in Murphy Center?" She goes, "No, I think we're pretty happy where we are." It's a dedicated facility to volleyball. The only other team that's in there, I think, is track. They have track has their they have a locker room over there, but it is the inside of the arena. It is all branded toward Blue Raider volleyball. So they're a fun. It's a fast-paced game. If you haven't watched college volleyball, which you have an opportunity to see a lot of it on TV these days, it's a fun thing to go watch.
Absolutely. Chip, as always, we got it in our show notes here that you have a hard out at 325, and
yes.
In recent visits, you have been prone to go over your own self-imposed hard out, so we want to make sure we get you out on time today, partner. Best of luck this weekend on the call out in Nevada. Wikipedia tells me their previous nickname was the Sage Brushers, so a chance to squirrel that away in some ancient Nevada lore there. So best of luck this weekend.
Well, and also understand that there are houses of gambling that may be out there in that area. I won't be. I'm not a good blackjack player, but if you got any tips, send them my way.
We'll send them your way, and you keep everybody else on the up and up while you're out there as well as part of your crew. So Chip,
I'll be the hall monitor, no question.
Yes, sir. See you next Tuesday, brother. Best of luck.
See you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Chip Walters, the MTSU Blue Raider voice, talking all things Blue Raiders. Yeah, Calvin, I found this out on Wikipedia here. The Nevada football team, as recently as like the 1920s, they were called the Sage Brushers. I would have never known that. I don't know that anybody would have known that, but I felt compelled to let Chip know. So that way he can maybe sprinkle that into his call. That's one game, Calvin, that when the season schedule came out, you can think of what's going to happen at Wisconsin, and we saw it kind of play out that way. But if MTSU had taken care of business versus Austin Peay, this game versus Nevada is kind of a mid-major, group of five kind of sicko college football fan. This is kind of a perfect matchup. I just hate it's a little diminished in terms of intensity with the dud that MTSU laid in week one.
Yeah, I'm sure MTSU fans and coaches expected to go into this week 1-1, but you start 0-2. I'm sure 99% of people expected to lose against Wisconsin, but if you go 0-3 heading into Marshall, and then if you drop Marshall going into your conference schedule, it might be another long year like it was last year for the Blue Raiders.
Yeah. The good news, we didn't really get into it with Chip, but the only saving grace is, in terms of bowl eligibility, you certainly were thinking, okay, maybe start 2-1 and kind of really get things going with Marshall, who's got a brand new roster basically and a brand new coaching staff. Maybe you could already have a handful of wins picked up. But on the other hand, another way to look at it is we haven't even got into conference play yet. And if MTSU can somehow right the ship, their conference schedule is about as easy as they've had in a long time and set up as nicely for them as they've had in a long time. So a chance to maybe make a little hay in terms of conference play.
Yeah, that's what people said before the season started, was that this is the easiest schedule that MTSU's had in a long time. Then they go and lose by 20 to an FCS school in week 1. That kind of put a damper on everybody's hopes for MTSU this year, especially after the way last year went. I've seen a lot of people say that they were out after week 1 this year. So obviously people expected to probably lose last week against Wisconsin. But the Blue Raiders have got to get a win sometime soon, or the people might be outside with flaming pitchforks outside the new Student Athlete Performance Center.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good scene, and Nevada's favored by about 7 or 8.5 points this week, so MTSU is, quote, up against it this week as they head out to Reno. Should be a fun ball game. Looking forward to Chip's call coming up on Saturday. When we come back, Calvin and I will dip into the grab bag. We got a lot to tap into here. We'll talk some NCAA news and notes. We got a lot of NFL roster and injury kind of updates to bring you guys up to speed on. All that and more comes your way right after this. You're watching and listening to Main Street Sports Today, where we're presented by TOA of Columbia.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
welcome back, gang. We are cruising toward the top of the hour here on Main Street Sports Today, presented as always by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That's Calvin White. I'm Wade Neely. Our producer, as always, is the one and only Mark Rogers. And Calvin, we got the grab bag here. We got a number of different ways we could go in this grab bag. But first, I always like to start with an update. We talked about it in our open. We even gave you a little bit of it in the rundown. Kind of a wild week 3. I guess we even talked about it in top story in some regards. How many teams of yours ended up playing? Kind of give us the rundown on how things fell out from teams in your coverage area from Friday night / this weekend, I guess.
So in Clarksville, Northeast was up playing McCracken County in Kentucky, so they were able to get their game in all on Friday night. And then Kirkwood beat Kenwood 21-0. That game was called late in the third quarter. That game was after halftime, so they those two teams just kind of mutually agreed to go ahead and call it. And then Clarksville, Rossview, West Creek, Antioch, Montgomery Central and Harpeth, and Clarksville Academy and Grace Christian all had to finish up on Saturday. Davidson Academy beat up on Northwest 35-0. They called that game early on Friday. So 4 games over in Clarksville got moved to Saturday. Nobody in Robertson County got moved to Saturday except Greenbrier and Macon County. Those two were supposed to play at 7 o'clock on Saturday. Macon County was up 7-0 in the first quarter, and they were supposed to play at 7 o'clock on Saturday. But I got a text Saturday morning from Greenbrier's coach saying that they had agreed to end that game, just not play the rest of it, and give Macon County the win. And so Greenbrier forfeited a 7-0 game in the first quarter. So they will take the loss. They will take the loss on that one. But everybody else in Robertson County at least finished on Friday. There were a couple games that got called early. East Robertson beat Joe Burns 34-3. That game was called at halftime. And, all those games at least went final on Friday, got a final score, whether it was called at halftime or called at halftime or a little bit into the second half. But Robertson County didn't get hit nearly as bad as Clarksville did. But we did end up getting final scores from all of the games this past week.
Yeah, and you mentioned Greenbrier. Talking against Macon County, the defending state champs, that is not just your average road trip there. That is a big-time road game for Greenbrier, and it's kind of unfortunate because they would like to have gotten a real test, a full game out of that.
Yeah, and, I'm not saying that they would have gone on the road and beaten Macon County, but, after the 1-1 start that they've had, they got shut out against White House Heritage on the road the first game of the season, and then they beat Sycamore by 3 points in week 2 to get their first win. They went winless last season. But Macon County was really kind of I don't want to say the first real test because White House Heritage is a good football team, but like you said, that's the reigning Class 4A state champion, and you want to see what you're made of. That's one of the teams you want to play, and it's unfortunate that it was a 7-0 game early in the first half, and they decided to call that one. But I also understand it from, a travel perspective, and the field conditions probably weren't great. They probably didn't want anybody getting hurt. So it's one of those things where I can see both sides, but would have also liked to see how that one played out.
Absolutely. You mentioned Sycamore. It's interesting. Sycamore goes on a road at Greenbrier, falls 25-22 in week 2. So they lose that game by 3. Their head coach, Josh Harrison, he had some choice words with the officials probably during and after the game. They had 5 touchdowns called back over the course of that game. So his comments were so much so that he got dinged a 1-game suspension. And so he was not at the game that I was at on Friday night or Saturday, I guess, because our game got postponed into Saturday. But talk about tough luck, Calvin. Sycamore falls by 3 at Greenbrier, and then 1 week later, with no head coach, they had an acting head coach, of course, but no head coach there on the sidelines. They go against another 4A team in Liberty Creek. They fall 28-27 in double overtime. Sycamore, I'm not going to say they're the best 1 and 2 team in all of 3A football, but they might have a pretty compelling case right now. They've been battling. Every single game has been a nail biter. Their only win has been that week 1 victory, 13-6 over Montgomery Central. The War Eagles, it feels like, are only a moment of time from maybe flipping this thing to the good if they can kind of get everything pulled together.
Yeah, and that's like you mentioned that week 1 game against Montgomery Central. Montgomery Central was in the exact same boat going into week 3. That week 1 game against Sycamore, they intercepted 3 passes, but lost by 7 points because they could only score 6 of their own. And they lose by, I believe, 6 or 7 to East Hickman in week 2 in double overtime. And then this past week, their game with Harpeth, they were tied 7-7 early in the second quarter, and that game got moved to Saturday, and Montgomery Central ended up winning that game, I believe, 26-9. So really rough nail-biter games in the first 2 weeks for Montgomery Central, but able to pull out a big win in week 3, and it kind of feels like them and Sycamore are in the same boat where they might be better than they were last year. Just the results haven't shown it so far.
Absolutely. Speaking of, we opened up the show by telling you there was Monday Night Football, as it were, last night, as Cheatham County got that close, hard-fought win, knocking off visiting Stewart County, 20-15. Gunner Orange throwing a 33-yard, great football name, by the way. Gunner Orange throwing a 33-yard touchdown pass with about 22 seconds left in that game to win it. Casey Patrick was on hand, filling in for yours truly. So good win for them. The Cubs are right back at it Friday at Harpeth. I believe that's the game I'm going to be at. So looking forward to another big week. And Calvin, I'm not even going to look at the forecast just yet, but I got to imagine it can't be worse than the forecast we had this past Friday. So hopefully we get all of our games in according fashion on Friday.
Yeah, no. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it seems like every county in the mid-state except Montgomery County moved kickoff up to 6:30 or 6 o'clock. It wasn't even really raining in Clarksville until about 9 or 9:30 on Friday, but from where all the lightning delays were putting the games into delay, they couldn't get all the games in on Friday. So we don't need another week like that again to where we have to go back out on Saturday after to finish covering the second half of a game after going out on Friday, hoping to get all of our stuff done on Friday. The only good thing is the games that did finish on Friday, we were able to kind of split up our workload where we could get all of the coverage from those games up on our websites and in our papers before we had to deal with the second half of those games on Saturday.
Absolutely. And another tip of the cap to Casey Patrick. I mentioned he went out last night and covered that Cheatham County victory. I don't know that you'll have a rougher turn of events than he had on Friday, though, because Calvin, he was set to be down at Creekwood for the big Dixon County Creekwood kind of backyard brawl, as they sometimes like to call it. They were still debating playing that game. They were debating kicking off at like 10 p.m. before they finally mercifully made the decision to postpone it. So Casey was stuck out there amidst all the chaos till close to 10 p.m. They finally call it off. They move it back to Saturday night at 7 p.m. Dixon County does go on the road and pick up a 24-23 win. And then he follows up with a Monday fill-in for yours truly. So props to Casey for getting it done last weekend. And props to all of our Main Street staff for bearing through what was a dicey week 3 situation in high school football. Speaking of dicey situations and week 3, Calvin, the Michigan Wolverines, my beloved Wolverines, we talked about, how they kind of got smacked by Oklahoma, and, we knew that this was coming for Michigan, but things kind of go sort of bad to worse. We knew coming out of that game that Sharon Moore was going to be suspended, a self-imposed 2-game suspension. And this is a killer because not only this is different than the Jim Harbaugh suspension a couple years ago, where Harbaugh could do everything except be at the stadium on Saturday. Sherrone Moore is basically locked out of the program until his suspension is over. But they got an interim head coach, and you may be familiar with the young man, Biff Poggi, the former Charlotte coach. He's going to be tabbed as Michigan's interim here in the next 2 weeks. While Moore is serving that suspension. Poggi is back on the staff. He was with Harbaugh for a little bit, and then obviously he went on to Charlotte. But Michigan getting at least the Biffster is going to be out there as their acting head coach when they get ready to take on Central Michigan this week, and then they got to go week 4 to Nebraska.
Yeah, you'd think that, or you'd like to assume that these next 2 games, even without Sherrone Moore, that Michigan can pick up 2 wins after falling to Oklahoma this past weekend, and then hopefully get Sherrone Moore back for the Wolverines' home game against Wisconsin. So it's kind of like that year Jim Harbaugh was suspended. He was suspended the first couple of games of the year, and it didn't even really matter because they were playing cupcake games the first couple of games of the year, and I think me or you could have went out there and coached that team, and they would have won. But it's somewhat a similar situation. They should beat Central Michigan, and then people always hype up Nebraska, and they're never good. So
I don't know. I'm a little nervous about that one.
Yeah, maybe Michigan can go on the road to Lincoln and beat Nebraska, and then be on a little 2-game winning streak by the time Sherrone Moore's back to coach against Wisconsin.
It'd be nice. I'm not necessarily worried about this week, but next week is the one that does have me a little concerned. But either way, the Biffster will be on the sideline as we head in to week 3 for my Wolverines this week. Calvin, time to check in on kind of not necessarily our favorite thing to do, but one of the things that always comes in and out of every week in the NFL is injury issues and injury concerns. And there was a big one coming out of San Francisco. Not only are the 49ers going to see George Kittle go on injured reserve after he suffered a hamstring injury in Week 1 versus the Seahawks. They also have cut ties with Jake Moody. Speaking of former Michigan standouts, the former Wolverine kicker has been designated for assignment, as it were. He is cut after missing a couple of kicks this past weekend. The 49ers also dealing with an injury, shoulder variety, as Juwan Jennings exited with a shoulder injury. So the 49ers, we talked about, they had a season from hell last year in terms of injuries and just bad luck. Even though they got the win Sunday, not necessarily feeling great coming out of this. You cut your kicker and you see Jennings and now Kittle both dinged up.
Yeah, it seems like the 49ers have, gone nowhere but downhill ever since that year. They went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Chiefs. Christian McCaffrey has had his stints with injury for them. George Kittle's been one of the best tight ends in the NFL for a long time now, and Juwan Jennings has kind of broken out into his own. He's become one of the not best receivers in the NFL, but he's become more of a known name than he was in the past. Obviously cut the kicker, Jake Moody. We saw Kyle Shanahan get up there and talk about Jake Moody missing kicks in the post-game presser. But, like you said, really bad season last year for the 49ers. And, with that coaching staff and the talent that they've had for the last couple of years, they're going to have a really big bounce-back season this year if they really want to get back in the playoffs and make some noise like they have the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Other injuries to keep your eyes on heading into Week 2. Drake London wasn't able to finish the Week 1 loss to the Buccaneers for the Falcons. They're saying he maybe suffered a shoulder sprain. He's considered day-to-day. Puka Nacua, this is one that obviously will impact Titans fans. He exited after what appeared to be a big helmet-to-helmet hit, was evaluated to concussion protocol, did come back, but then also left and then came back again, so who knows his availability. And we've obviously seen the friendly fire, as it were, as Travis Kelce decimates his own teammate. Xavier Worthy suffering a dislocated shoulder. Don't have a timetable just yet, but realistically, he's going to be out for their Week 2 contest. So some key names, and mention, just for good measure, Calvin, I'm seeing this now on the wire too. Brock Purdy is listed as uncertain for this week with a toe/shoulder injury. So as much as the injury obviously affects a lot of folks with their fantasy football team, these are some real key injuries to teams that desperately need their teams at full strength this week.
Yeah, Brock Purdy, he's the straw that stirs the drink over in San Francisco. He hasn't turned into one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's still a really good player. And we talked about it with Steve a little bit earlier. You've to be competitive in just about any level of football, you've got to be competitive in at the line of scrimmage, and you've got to have at least a serviceable quarterback. And without Brock Purdy, along with all their other injuries, George Kittle, Jawan Jennings, all those injuries could spell doom for the 49ers here in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. We closed the grab bag, Calvin. There was a lot of hubbub and a lot of talk about tweaking the kickoff rules this season, and the NFL maybe has gotten it right, at least in terms of blending safety with excitement. More than 75% of kickoffs were returned in Week 1. They had 16 games with 156 kickoffs. 118 of those were returned, so that's about 75.6%. Interesting among all that is Jim DK for the Titans led the NFL with an average of about 36 yards per return. Obviously, we saw the massive return that kind of helped get the Titans some free points right before halftime in their game Sunday versus the Broncos. But interesting, it still doesn't look quite right. And, I understand you can't go back to the original old school kickoff style because of player safety concerns. Maybe this is about as good as we can get. It was kind of refreshing and kind of nice to be able to see some actual returns and some flashes of daylight there for these returners.
Yeah, it's a lot more entertaining as a fan to actually watch the guys run the kickoff out. Instead, kind of the flip side of that is just about every team has a kicker that can boom it out of the back of the end zone for a touchback. But it's more entertaining as a fan, at least, to see the return man take it out and try to go score. And that was the big thing when this rule change was first proposed, how it basically wouldn't, matter because teams can just kick it out of the back of the end zone. But seeing the punts and the kickoffs actually being returned is a lot more entertaining than some guy just standing in the end zone waving his hands because the ball's 30 yards over his head.
Yeah, we at least get a little more razzle-dazzle and a little more excitement. So something to keep your eyes on heading into Week 2. Again, the NFL boasting 75% of its kicks were returned in Week 1. Speaking of returning, Calvin and I do have to step out for a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we will return with Top 5 Tuesday. We've talked sports for the first couple of Top 5s with Calvin and myself, but coming after the break, we will talk about Top 5 TV shows that we discovered later in life or after the fact. Should be an interesting little deep dive here. We'll flex our Netflix muscles here as we come back. Calvin and I will talk Top 5 Tuesday, which is presented by our good friends at Columbia Power and Water. And we will have all of that coming your way as we close out what's been an epic Top 5 Tuesday episode of Main Street Sports Today. We'll do all that and more right after this here on MSST, presented by TOA of Columbia.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier Whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanata. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
There's a line that links us all. Most of the time, we don't even think about it, but it's everywhere. Illuminating our neighborhoods, empowering our businesses, and helping us to recharge. Whether it comes from our grids, the sun, or a kind heart, we believe in the power of good energy. And as your family and region continue to grow, you can trust that we'll always be there for you. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
Final segment, boys and girls, on this good-looking Tuesday. It is Top 5 Tuesday on Main Street Sports Today, where we are presented, as always, by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. And we do get into Top 5 Tuesday. But before we go any further, I want to set the schedule for the rest of the week. Coming up on tomorrow's Wild and Wacky Wednesday episode of the program, it will be Calvin and David Wilson. Should be joined by our good friend Heather Williams. Mine went slowly blank there. A little COVID fog still creeping in on me there. I'm sorry, folks. Heather Williams will join us talking all things NASCAR tomorrow. Should be a good episode with Calvin and David. David and Mo will be in the saddle on Thursday, and then yours truly and Mo back together on Friday to close us out. So, Calvin, got a big week. You and David, always electric when you two get together. Sometimes, producer Mark's got the real tough assignment on Wednesday. He's got to keep you two kind of separated on the up and up, make sure you're not pulling any punches on each other, right?
Yeah, me and Mark have to, kind of on the flip side of that, me and Mark have to prevent each other from getting after David, because David comes in here on this show with Wi-Fi problems every Wednesday. We got to prevent David from cutting in and out of the show. So anytime we can get out of Wild and Wacky Wednesday with no connection problems from David, it's a good show.
Well, I mean, that just adds to the wild and wackiness, I guess. But also, I see what David's trying to do. He's saying, think about how much they need me if I'm cutting in and out, right? So I see what you're up to, David. But yes, hopefully, Godspeed, a good show tomorrow. Let's close our program out today, though, with Top 5 Tuesday. Calvin and I are going to debate the top 5 TV shows that we have discovered later in life or after the fact. But before we get into Top 5 Tuesday, if you are tired of buffering and slow internet speeds, upgrade your life with Columbia Power and Water System Internet. Get lightning fast internet with speeds up to an incredible 1 gig. Stream, game, and work seamlessly, all for $70 a month. If you're looking for local service and local support, visit cpws.com, or you can call 931-375-7777 and tell them your friends at Main Street Sports Today sent you. Calvin, we're debating the shows that we discovered after the fact. There's no ridicule here because we've all stumbled upon things late in life sometimes. So with that being said, I'm going to tip it off to you. Start us off with our top 5 shows that we discovered later in life.
Yeah, the diehard TV watchers are going to get after me for this one, but I was scrolling through Netflix a couple weeks ago just trying to find something to watch. And I was scrolling, and they have that section that's called, like, top shows. And I realized I had never seen How I Met Your Mother. And so I started watching How I Met Your Mother about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'm all the way through, or I think I'm halfway through season 4 or 5 right now with my girlfriend. Everybody always talked about it. I realized I had never seen it, so I'm about halfway through How I Met Your Mother right now.
Not bad. And I got on a kick with that show 7 or 8 years ago, and I realized I was late to it. And I watched quite a few, maybe a couple seasons worth, but I never did finish. So that's something that I need to go back and revisit at some point. So that is a good pull to start things off. Hey, look, I know we had Chip on the show, but I'm going to go ahead, and Chip would kill me for saying this, but The Sopranos is my number 1. And I have a weird thing with The Sopranos, Calvin. I watched the first season of The Sopranos like 3 times, but for some reason I couldn't bust through into season 2 until about 2 years ago. And then finally I busted through and I finished it all, and it was amazing. And then I was sad that it was over. I didn't have any more episodes to watch. But for some reason, The Sopranos had always eluded me. I knew how great it was, but I never watched it fully until about 2 years ago. So that's got to be my number one.
Yeah, that's another one of those shows that everybody always talks about as being one of the best of all time, possibly, and I've never got around to watching that either. But hopefully, my second pick this show, it debuted when I was about 7 or 8 years old. So I didn't watch it from the beginning when it first aired. But when I got into it about, late middle school, high school, I decided I was a really big fan of the show. But I was late to the Walking Dead train. That show came on when I was about 7 or 8. But when I got on there, and it was a really good show. The later seasons weren't as great as the beginning and the middle, but I started watching about season 2 or 3 probably, and I was hooked.
Yeah, and what you said is accurate. That's one of those shows that started off hot. I don't know that they're still making seasons, but it feels like every time they came out with a new season, by the end, everybody's like, wow, we're really still doing this. But those early seasons, oh yeah, they were gold. No doubt about that. As that's a good pull there for your number two. My number two, I'm in the midst of watching this. I'd seen the first season or two, but never finished it until now, and I'm chugging through it as we speak with me and the missus. Better Call Saul. Love Breaking Bad. Have seen Breaking Bad a couple of different times from start to finish, but never got into Better Call Saul all the way. But now I'm on a steamroll, finally plowing through the first 3 or 4 seasons, and no end in sight. So I'm going to be determined to finish Better Call Saul. That's my number 2 on this list.
Yeah, I've always been a bigger movie person than a TV person, so I've never seen Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. So all the TV diehards are going to come for me in the comment section. But
that's tough.
Yeah, but my number 3 pick is another show that first came on TV when I was a little bit younger. But it's a show that I've seen all the way through probably 2 or 3 times. But The Office. The humor is not everybody's cup of tea, but it's funny to me, and so it's something that I've seen a couple times through now.
That's a good pick, and I still have yet to watch. I think the first episode just came out last week, but they're doing a spinoff of The Office on Peacock, and it's called The Paper, and it's about a newspaper. So I feel like we should get Dave Gould to provide everybody with Peacock memberships so we can all watch The Paper here, and so we can give proper reports. But The Office is about as good as it gets. Classic show. And I'm due for a rewatch on The Office. That's one of those shows you can just flip on at any given time and just pop right in and out of. Up next for me, this predates you, Calvin, by a wide stretch. It almost predates me. But I didn't know anything about this show. I got a feeling producer Mark will like this pick here. But I had never heard of or even seen an episode of Twin Peaks until around 2015. And then the moment I watched the first episode, I was hooked. Love David Lynch, his movies, and I don't know how I didn't know anything about Twin Peaks until then. But Twin Peaks is a show that I am very thankful that I discovered, even though it was some 15, 20 years after the fact. A great 90s early sitcom. Well, not sitcom per se, but an early 90s drama, we'll call it.
Yeah, I can't even say I've ever heard of that show. So sorry, Mark. But pick number 4 for me is going to be Ozark. It's one of those shows where they only made a couple, I think 3 or 4 seasons maybe, but it's one of those ones that my girlfriend and I found on Netflix while we were in college. We banged it out. We watched it all the way through in a couple months, I want to say. But we found that really late. It was a really good show.
Yep. Wife loves Ozark. I've only seen the first season and a half. I still haven't finished it, but everything that I've watched is great. I just don't know why I haven't finished it at this point. That's a good pull by you. My number 4, I didn't watch this in real time. I wasn't too far behind. It was maybe just finished up, but Mad Men, one of my all-time favorite shows. Enjoyed that. Real quick, Calvin, you're number 5.
Number 5 is going to be Big Bang Theory. Another one of those shows that debuted when I was little, so didn't get to see it from the beginning to end, but I've seen that all the way through as well. That's another really good show that I got onto later in the game.
Absolutely. My number 5 is Band of Brothers. Didn't watch it early, but I've seen it 3 or 4 times now. It's great stuff from early HBO days. Thanks to Calvin White. Thanks to producer Mark Rogers. That has been Top 5 Tuesday, boys and girls. Calvin and David will be with you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Main Street Sports Today. We'll see you next time.